Thanks, Jared. Well, he's the man of the moment, and we look forward to welcoming Chris Fagan, the Brisbane Lions coach, later on in the program after what was one of the great upset victories of 2017. And when you consider the victories of 2017, that was one hell of a 4 points. Let's introduce the panel. And I've never seen you in such a jubilant mood. Brownie, welcome to you. You told me this afternoon you had one of the greatest sporting days of your life post your career.
It was unbelievable. You know what? I nearly put it past the premierships, Jared.
Serious?
I was ringside there for Jeff Horn when he beat Manny Pacquiao. Then I jumped on the bus to head back to the Gold Coast with my mates, a couple of cold beers, and watched the mighty Lions on the TV screen on the bus. We kicked them home. The bus was rocking. It was the Wenger bus, Jared, on the way to the bus. The Wenger bus.
Very interesting bus from all reports. Brownie, he's changed his story slightly. About 2 hours ago, he inspired Jeff the Horn at Horn. Well done.
Yes, thank you very much.
RSPCET for you.
Can you spell that again?
RSPECT.
I know you can't spell it because you certainly haven't given it, nor have any of us, to a certain team that is sure to play a big part in the September action.
You're talking Tigers?
It's long overdue.
Ooh. I'm not going to try and spell yours, Kingy. The Randstands.
The Randstands. We saw a new tactic on the weekend from Ken Hinkley and his crew to tag Alex Rance with Jackson Trengove, and I think every contender would have looked at that and said, OK, there's an answer now. There's something we can work with. It only worked for a half until Alex worked the game out, but it was better than your spelling.
As you can see, spelling lessons and plenty more coming up straight after this. Well, the Wenger bus has thrown many a person off, but let's get stuck into it. Brownie, it was one of the great wins of the season. Yeah. The Brisbane Lions were 28 points down at one stage, and the coach had lost the plot, and he actually went looking for the plot in a very strange spot at one stage.
I'll tell you what, I love this. Obviously, he shows plenty of emotion, but I love the passion, Jared. And as a supporter now, certainly as a past player, but definitely as a supporter, we love this. We love the passion. He's taken great ownership in this football club, and the morale is fantastic. And the competitiveness that the players have shown all season is a reflection on Chris Fagan. I think he's done a tremendous job and can't wait to speak to him later on.
When the Bombers hit the front, when McDonald, Tip and Woody kicked that goal, I thought they were cooked. It was a magnificent victory, and the way they lifted was unbelievable. Look at them down the track. But the 2-minute drill... The 2-minute drill is now almost the most famous 2 minutes in footy, and the Bombers have failed the test twice in 2 weeks.
And that's the shock, Jared. And the younger players are actually living up to their end of the party. And you look at their senior core leaders are letting them down late. And let's have a look at who they are, Jared. Joe Watson pulls this back into the corridor when the scores are level with a minute and a half or 2 minutes to go. That's just a horrendous decision. He's not a great kick, we know that, so stay within your limitations. This goes up the middle, Jason. That's an unacceptable contest there from your big man, your ruckman.
You need better, don't you?
Supposed to set the tone, and he wants to argue and carry on. Then 30 seconds later, plenty of time to get organised down back. A high ball to the goal square, very predictable entry, and your best player for the season, your number one full-back, doesn't come and kill that situation. I just think it was a horrible 2 minutes off the back of the previous week. They would have addressed that all week. I was staggered to see how poor they were in that last 2 minutes.
A distinct lack of tools pushing back. Yeah. I mean, it was actually even numbers. Normally you get a couple of extras back there and then try and run the ball out as well.
The numbers don't lie, though, Jason. It's almost as if they were in the spotlight and they just didn't react, the Bombers. Have a look at this. This was a domination. This is a side that couldn't get the football in the first quarter. In fact, I think their pressure was well and truly beneath AFL standards, even at the lower end, but they responded. And then once they smelt victory, they went on with the job. That's a domination from the Brisbane Lions.
It is, and I think we have to give credit to Brisbane. As much as we can sit here and say it was a poor performance from the Bombers, Brisbane went and won the game. That's what I really liked about the performance. A young group that is starting to grow in belief. They knew that they weren't winning certain areas of the game, but clearances and contested possession went through the roof. I thought it was an inspirational win for that group that will now take, I think, leaps and bounds forward from that.
Speaking of big wins, you witnessed the Tigers push themselves into the top 4 at the expense of Port Adelaide, who a couple of us on this panel thought that they were genuine premiership contenders.
Correct, and we all went through our top 4 contenders last week or 2 weeks ago. Not one of us even thought about putting Richmond in the mix. And yet here they are, travelling over to Adelaide, a hostile crowd, taking on Port Adelaide, who look to be one of the teams that can do some damage come September. And they were fantastic. It wasn't a classic game, and they didn't play particularly well in the first half. But what they did do was hang around. They stayed in the game. And this group believes they can be competitive. And all that talk about can you win big games, and in particular finals games, with small forwards, I'm starting to think you can, Jared, because the smalls for Richmond are doing the job. And it's not a matter of, look, you mightn't have that tall to kick down the line to when you need a bailout kick, but the defensive pressure that they give you at ground level and the competitive nature of all of these guys is extraordinary. They've all got pace, and they're all not afraid to have a crack.
Well,
That's
they isolated
the
pace and small elements of their list and said 2 or 3 years ago it was in decline. They've certainly rectified that, and they've got it from all areas, rookies, and, of course, from the draft. What they have done is they've nailed each and every one of them. And the pace factor, David, allowed them to win a different way. They've been pushing up and locking the ball inside forward 50. They had to do it the other way. They almost had to play the paddock.
Why can't you win finals playing like that, King?
Well, our resident centre-half forward member over here will tell you that that's the case. But I think you can. We've been talking about hybrids for 2 years. They're not necessarily hybrids, but when Martin goes forward, they have a different look to that forward line, and I think he's their pseudo centre-half forward when he goes forward.
The problem will be in finals if they come under pressure in the midfield. You know, we know that finals, a lot of contested football. They'll want to keep Dustin Martin in the midfield if things turn against him, and then they won't have that target down forward. So it could become a problem if they have to keep going down the line, down the line in September, and Jack Rewalt's the only option there. They could get outmarked and rebounded against. So, but the way they're playing currently, putting that amount of pressure on, you have to say they're a chance. I think Toby Nankervis will play a critical role in September, being able to. Obviously, his ruck work's got to be good, Jared, but around the ground contest, especially in the air as well, that's going to be very important for them to goal away.
They were smashed for contested football on the weekend. Port dominated clearances, dominated inside 50s, yet they found a way. I just think that that's an unbelievable result for Damien Hardwick and his
Alex Rance found a way also to impact on the game after being well and truly led astray in the Rance stance.
He interrupts about 20 inside 50s a game by himself, whether it be intercept possessions or spoils. He had one at half-time. They tactically worked this out perfectly. Jackson Trengove went with him. And what he did do, and we'll show some vision here, he just checked his run. He pushed back on him and cost him split seconds every time he wanted to go and impact another contest. And once he couldn't do that, often he was caught in no man's land, in a really awkward and poor position. Trengove kicked a couple of goals. He had a real chance to kick a couple more. Didn't take that chance, but this was perfect. Every time Alex wanted to leave him, he just checked him. Gets there a second late, becomes a collision, Trengove gets possession. And then when it wasn't his turn, Jason, you were there, he just did enough to take him out of the area to allow Dixon a genuine one-on-one or better. It was perfectly done. At some stage during the first half, I said to you, do they need to throw him in the ruck? Do they need to do something to get Rancy into the game? Because he looked lost.
I thought it was a great strategy from Ken Hinkley, and it worked beautifully. And we spoke to Alex Rance post-game, and he actually said, it got in the head. I mean, at half-time when we saw the great footage of him and his skipper Trent Cotchin, it was seriously in his head. But then he went back in the second half to just beating his man, used that as a starting point, and then he started to play much better.
He started going, when Rance is at his best, he watches the football a lot too. He got sidetracked by his man, you agree? But in the second half, he just saw the ball and he went for it. He went for his intercept marks, he went for his spoil, he contributed to other people's contests.
What he did do, and what the Richmond coaching group did do, is said, mate, you just do your job on Trengove and trust David Asprey to get the job done, and Dylan Grimes, and let's just see what happens. And they raised the bar. So maybe there's a greater level of trust there now, but this is coming again. There's no doubt in my mind that all the contenders would have sat back and said, maybe we've got someone, not being disrespectful to Jackson Trengove, but maybe we've got a better talented player to really challenge him now, with a defensive mindset, but then hit the scoreboard.
I thought one of the greatest compliments from a Richmond perspective was to have a great win like that without Rance and without Cotchin playing huge roles. I think that speaks volumes for the belief in this group going forward. And it's interesting, we on the very same weekend, we saw a couple of other instances of intercept players being taken care of. Taylor Duray for Hawthorn played the defensive role on Jeremy Howe and took away all those big intercept marks. He kicked a couple of goals himself. So coaches are starting to look. I mean, we've spoken about Tagging coming back into the game. Now it's coming back to the defensive forward role, isn't it?
It's a very tough role to do as a forward, though, because you still need to be able to contribute on the scoreboard. So just getting that balance right, you need to find the right player.
That's why it's such a fascinating season, because what can be your strength one week can be undermined the next. It's punch and counter-punch. Where does it leave Port Adelaide? Currently, they're struggling against the top 8 sides, and in the press conference after the match, Ken Hinkley was grilled, and basically he gave the press what they wanted to. Yes, until we can beat these top 8 sides, we're going to be pretenders. But I've got to say, Kingy, the numbers tell you that they're in a very good position right now. All they've got to do is get their conversion.
Oh, absolutely. They were dominant with contested footy, inside 50s. You will have those games every now and then, but it won't be the norm. They're 0-5 against top 8 teams, but 3 of those losses by under 13 points. They've been in those games. It's a different Port Adelaide to what we've seen over the last couple of years.
Yeah, no doubt. They're terrific. Me and Jace saw them in round 1. I'm not sure were you up there, King, and they were outstanding against Sydney. They blew Sydney away. Up at the SCG, they were impressed. They didn't get beaten by much by West Coast. And the showdown earlier in the year was a cracker when Adelaide were absolutely flying. So, yeah, you know, I think they're on the right track, no doubt. They're about the same level as Richmond. We know. Just remember, Port Adelaide were 16 points up late in that third quarter before Richmond banged on 6 goals in a row.
After round 1, Jason, you were glowing in your praise of the captain of Port Adelaide, Travis Boak. Have you got some concerns?
Well, that's been one of the biggest issues for me, is the form of Travis Boak. So that game, he had 26 touches in round 1, kicked a couple of goals. He's playing a lot of the high half-forward role. All of a sudden, since then, Gerard, his averages have dropped to 21 touches a game. He's only having 2 or 3 clearances a game, less than a goal a game, and only 1 score assist per match. That's way under. Now, for me, I would rather see him swap back with Chad Wingard, who's essentially gone full-time into the midfield, because I think Wingard's much more dangerous in that forward half of the ground. And even though Wingard's playing really good football on ball, I just think they're robbing Peter to pay Paul, and I'd feel much better about having Wingard as a more attacking threat than Boak.
Do you think they've put Wingard in there, though, and got maybe pushed Boak out of there to add a bit of sharpness to their midfield? Because, you know, they've got Wines, they've got Powell, Pepper, they've got some big bodies in there. I'm not sure Boak is looking his sharp self.
He's not slow, Boakey, but his form is a concern, and he needs to get back to his best if Port Adelaide's going to have success this year.
Pressure starting to build, obviously, on Nathan Buckley. Collingwood have won just 5 matches. Carlton have won 5 matches. Start of the season, Carlton were essentially looking just to continue their build. Collingwood were looking to play finals. Where's it at right now, Jason? Because Collingwood would appear to be only a mathematical chance of making finals.
Yeah, they are, and I've said this a number of times over the course of this show, Jerry, I never had them in my finals calculations because I don't rate the list. Now, that's just my assessment. Some people have different assessments, and maybe they set the bar a little bit higher. So all this talk about they have to play finals for Nathan Buckley to keep his job. So, well, let's be really honest. Nathan put it on the table himself, but I find it a strange thing to measure them by because I don't think the list is a finals list.
I think Gary Purr put it on the table as well after the Anzac Day loss. But Paul Roos was the other person who wasn't overly enthusiastic about their list and their list build. If you look at Collingwood's list management over the past few years, it's been appalling. He hasn't mixed his words, has he? He's really had a fair crack. And I think with some justification, it's been almost an ad hoc list build, and they haven't nailed too many.
Yeah, I've been very critical of the goal-to-goal line, the drafting of the goal-to-goal line. They've got Darcy Moore there. No one else really stands out. Sharon Bird came in this year, so that is a huge concern. No structure. They've obviously loaded up on their midfield. You know, the Chris Mayne thing hasn't worked over the off-season. Daniel Wells has come in, but he's been injured for a big majority. So
there are a couple of
that
good
hasn't
picks.
worked. There's been a couple.
Trelaw's been a terrific pick.
Jeremy Howe's been good.
Jeremy Howe's been outstanding.
I also think Hoskin Elliott's a good pick-up.
Yeah, but you can't go and expect to win finals at all if you've got no goal-to-goal line. There's certainly no development of that. And that's been a huge concern. They've got rid of the Rat Pack. They've obviously decided to go in a different direction. It's been poor, so whoever's been in charge, or the main man in charge of the list management down in Collingwood, has to be under a huge amount of pressure, not only Nathan Buckley.
But doesn't Nathan Buckley... So we had this discussion last week. Doesn't Nathan Buckley set the vision? This is where the game's going. These are the types of players that I want. 6 drafts. You can't sit here and say they lost 2 or 3 players from the Rat Pack, or they got 2 or 3 players they didn't really want, or someone else chose. That's irrelevant. This is the only fact that really matters at the moment, is the sliding scale of year on year. That is not the profile of a man who keeps his job. I'm sorry, but that's cold, hard facts. They keep telling us that next year's the year, next year's the year. Well, it hasn't come. And nothing's changed in my eyes. I don't know why we're all saying giving excess time. But the time is now. This was the year they were supposed to perform. This midfield glut of talent we talk about, they gave up first-round picks for Treloar.
Kingy, you put this on the table after the Anzac Day loss. It was fairly graphic at the time. It was a lot of people criticised you for it. A lot of those same people are now repeating your words. Do you expect Nathan to be there at the end of the season or at the start of next year, Brownie?
Not if it continues. Look, Jared, we know if they got on a run and they won their last 7 games, whatever it is, they make finals. Of course he survives. But I think Collingwood would be looking at other options now, definitely. And I would say it's unlikely that Bucks coaches Collingwood next year at this stage.
Footy World was in shock, I think, on Friday night, bordering on angry with what they saw from Thomas Bugg. He's been sent straight to the tribunal, which I don't think anybody thought would be any other difference. But it has raised the issue again, Brownie, for about the 6th time of the introduction of the red card.
Yeah, well, look, the red card, I'm not sure about it, but I've come around to it over the last few days, Jared. In a big final or a grand final, you wouldn't want to lose a player early. They sit on the bench like Callum Mills there. And so effectively you're a man down. So with video review technology, if you've got the right people in place, they can maybe make a call on the run with the right evidence. It would be an extreme call if that player that's been injured is out for the rest of the game. Maybe Thomas Bugg or the perpetrator has to get pulled off. So I have come around to that thinking, Jared, for extreme cases.
I don't know what the big issue is really with it. I mean, the AFL have been strong on lots of social agendas. They've paid lip service to being strong on violence on the field. They've upped the ante for jumper punches. I think it's time they up the ante for punches at the other end of the scale. The 4 goes to 6 and the 6 goes to 8. And surely you have to bring in the red card. But not according to Simon Lethlean as early or as late as yesterday on 3AW.
I think there's a place for send-offs in community football because it's a deterrent for really abhorrent acts or otherwise. But I don't see a place for it in our game at this stage.
I think it's the ultimate deterrent. You wouldn't want to be dragged off in a grand final. And we are only talking about incidents at the extreme level.
But who makes the call, Jim? Who makes the call?
Well, it's quite simple. You've got a third umpire there. Get the third umpire to have a look, or the fourth umpire. You can have, at finals, you can have serious AFL officials there.
There's no AFL official at every game.
Yeah, I understand that, but how quickly does it need to happen?
As quick as it.
So you have a quick look.
Get the decision right.
You have a quick look at the video, and you sum up his intent.
How long would
make a judgment call.
How long would it have taken you to work out whether Tom Bugg needs to go off the ground?
Well, I want to see what happened beforehand too, because there was a little bit of push and shove going on beforehand.
You know what you get for a push and shove? You get a free kick. You don't expect to get KO'd.
Understand that. At least he was facing him and it wasn't a king hit. But all I'm saying is you're asking someone on one look at that to make a judgment call about the intent, about all the things that had happened in the build-up, in the lead-up to that. I reckon it's dangerous because if you get one of them wrong...
You're not judging the grey area ones.
If you get one of them wrong, you destroy a possible final.
What you're trying to do is get rid of the one. You're trying to get rid of them all. And I'm not sure what can happen in a lead-up or a build-up to an incident that justifies a KO punch.
No, some will be cut and dried, but some won't be as cut and dried.
Well, then you don't make the call.
For instance, the week before, would you have given the red card to Bashahuli?
Absolutely.
But a lot of people said, he wasn't looking at him and he just threw the arm back.
This is
worse.
But
I agree, but you need to actually slow it down and have a look at it from a number of different angles to see that he did look back and the impact was huge before you can make that decision.
Well, that was negligent in the extreme. People are saying it was
That's
careless.
not negligent, that was deliberate.
If you knock someone out, Jason, and they can play no further part in the game, then surely that's a fair indication that something untoward has happened at the level that we're talking about, minimum 4-week level.
If it's cut and dried, deliberate,
outside of that, you're not getting involved.
I reckon there's been 6 in 7 years, but 2 in the last 2 weeks. And I think it's time that the AFL showed some genuine leadership on this and brought in the red card.
The difference is, though, it'll be interesting to see what Bugg gets because you've got 2 things to look at. You've got Bashahuli only gets 4 weeks last week, so Bugg can't get too much higher than that. Because they've already set the standard, unless they go closer to the Barry Hall incident a few years ago when he got 7 weeks.
What are you expecting?
I think he should get 5 weeks. 1 extra week than Bashahuli.
I would have thought it was very similar.
4?
I'm the same as Jason.
I'm a 6, I've got to say. 6. But let's move on. The Bulldogs can't get their game going in any shape or form, boys, even though they nearly pinched a win, but I think their coach even conceded on the weekend it would have been a pinch.
Yeah, the season can't finish quick enough for the Dogs. It's not, the finish line's still too far away. They're only playing in bursts. They really are. They did it again on the weekend.
You're still loyal to their premiership contention?
I am, because I think that if they can find a way to hang in, Jerry, they're 7-7 at the moment. Everyone will tell you they're gone. But they've still got that talent there. They can still do it in my eyes. They're just too up and down.
The problem for me is they haven't shown any real form like they did last year. They had a great September, but last year their first half of the season was as good as any side. So they had huge parts there. They haven't shown it at all this year. They've shown it in fits and spurts.
I'm not seeing the spirit in the group. Like last year, it looked like they all believed they were on a mission and they knew where they were heading and they would have done anything to help out a teammate. I'm not saying the spirit's not there, but it's not as evident as it was last year. You only have to be a little bit off for things to go right, don't you?
Mark Hutchins has done a lot of good jobs for the Eagles, and again, he took the scalp of JJ. His numbers commercially, it's been a really poor month for him. He's gone from 800.
He should have signed a while ago, Jerry.
Yeah, it's down to about 400 at this stage. JJ, it might be worth signing quickly.
Maybe he might have had an agreement with another club, Jared, where they might be on the hook if he has signed an agreement with some other club. They'd be spewing because they might have overpaid. But
hope it wasn't West Coast, Brownie, because they had a good look at him on the weekend. Yeah. This was a big win. Simo's come under a lot of pressure over recent times. He made some strong selection issues, and I suspect that those people who couldn't travel might have been part and parcel of it. It raises the issue about the combination of Priddis and Mitchell because without the two, they looked a little quicker.
That's what I want to talk about, Jared, and that's been the knock for me on the West Coast midfield. Started to look a bit slow, and even Shuey hasn't shown the same burst at times. He probably relies on Nat Nui with the big long hits to get going. But you've got to ask the question now, Priddis and Mitchell, I'm not sure they can play big minutes together in the midfield. Maybe Mitchell has to play more at half back. We know when Priddis comes back in. Jack Reddin came into the side, just had a bit of pace around the ground, but that balance looked better. It looked better without, obviously Priddis wasn't there, but just only the one of them there, because I think they've started to look a little bit slow.
And Darling's probably had his best game for a couple of years.
So too, Nathan Vardy.
He's been good.
My only concern is their good is very good, but we don't see it often enough. Do they have the consistency to actually do some damage come September?
Well, I reckon their last 3 weeks have been really good. They dropped last week, but they played particularly well by the last couple of minutes. So they've turned up the intensity, and maybe the results will flow. Johnny Patton, I thought, had his best game, Brownie. You had a look at it. What do you think?
Yeah, he was outstanding. He played terrific last week against the Brisbane Lions, but certainly an upgrade in opposition. He was fantastic. Kicked the 4 goals. Took some very strong marks. His movement around the ground was great. Not this movement, though, Jared. 6 minutes 30 to go in the last quarter. It's tight. You're the big key forward. You veto any calls, Jared. Now, I can say that because I used to veto calls like that.
You told Lee to get stuffed, did you?
I used to tell Lee to get stuffed and send the runner back with a nice little message. Late in games, Jared. But if John O'Patton didn't veto it, Leon Cameron should have vetoed it. Your big key forward doesn't come out. It looks like he's going to be the match winner. But they compounded the mistake by Shane Mumford going on, and Mumford stayed at full forward instead of swapping with Lobb. Lobb's a far better forward than Shane Mumford, so Lobb stayed in the ruck. Mumford as the key forward, he hasn't got the movement to be a key target down there. So they compounded the mistake, and obviously then Hawkins couldn't get back on the field until a minute 30 to go.
Surely players need or must have the responsibility to make a judgment call to overrule when it's a critical time to say, you know what, I don't genuinely need a rest. The game's in the balance and I'm playing a role that might impact it. I'm not going to go off. Someone else can do it. It can't be that hard.
What about if the bloke who has to come off for John Patton tells the coach to get stuffed? Then you've got a problem.
He gets dropped.
It's where, and I don't want to use this word, it's where respect comes into it, Jason. You've got to show it some respect. On that note, we're going to take a break because it's been a very slow and arduous build for the Brisbane Lions, but they are on their way, and their coach, Chris Fagan, well, he enjoyed the best win of his short career to date, and didn't he enjoy showing it?
The heart of these Lions, just massive today at Etihad Stadium. And how good is that? How sweet the taste of victory for Chris Fagan. We saw him disappear in the last quarter, but he's back to enjoy it all.
Yes, it was one of the great upset victories of the season, and in 2017, that's absolutely saying something. Chris Fagan, coach of the Brisbane Lions, who orchestrated their third victory yesterday at Etihad Stadium, has been good enough to stay over to talk to us about the Brisbane Lions and his future as a coach. Great timing, Chris. Welcome to you, and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, great to come in after a victory.
Wasn't it just a fantastic day in footy? I mean, you've been in a successful club at Hawthorn for a long, long period of time. You knew what you were getting into. You went into the Lions with your eyes opened. You've had a couple of wins, but this one was incredibly exciting.
Yeah, it was special because we came from behind. All of our other victories, we sort of got out in front and stayed out in front, whereas this one we had to show a little bit of ticker. And for a young group, they get a lot of belief from that.
You actually, at quarter time, I didn't think your pressure was anywhere near what it needed to be. You nearly knocked off Essendon in the first time you played them early in the season. There was a really great response after quarter time, and you must get a lot of joy knowing that they're listening to you and responding to you.
Yeah, they're an easy group to coach. In fact, they're probably too coachable at times. They take you literally and do things to the nth degree, but they listened in well at quarter time. We lifted our pressure. Essendon weren't able to take as many uncontested marks as what they did in round two, and I think that helped us get right back into the game.
Now, Fags, I'm not sure I know you anymore. You always were the calm, considered voice at Hawthorn, and now the camera in the coach's box doesn't miss a beat. You see all the emotion come out. There was a classic one on the weekend where you went to ground. You just disappeared.
I was a little bit upset about an incident that happened in the game, and I thought it was better to duck down and swear than do it in front of the cameras. In fact, you forget that the cameras are there, and you know, for me, I've been restraining myself for 19 years, and now I can actually express myself in the way that I want to on game day, which is sometimes a little bit over the top, I suppose.
It's a really interesting one though, because you used to be in the Hawthorn box as the one that had put the hand on Clarko's shoulder when you needed to say, mate, settle down, focus on the job, don't get too upset. Who does that for you? And we can always see you here. You're the right-hand man all the time. Who does that for you now?
I pretty much do it to myself, because what happens, I have a little bit of an outburst and then I stand up and I go, oh, sorry, boys.
Are you surprised? I mean, it's great entertainment and great theatre for us, but are you surprised at how much emotion and creative emotion you're coming up with in the box? You look back at it and see yourself and say, is that the same bloke as was helping Clarko win premierships?
I am a little bit surprised with myself. You put a lot of time and effort into it during the week, I guess, and things happen on game day that can cause you a bit of frustration. Poor old Danny Daly there. Like I wasn't going crook at him. I reckon that was a game down in Tassie against Hawthorn. Might have been a little bit more of the competitive juices flowing through the body on that day. But yeah, it has surprised me a bit.
What it does show you is that when the buck stops with you, when you're the top dog, you ride every single kick and handball a lot more, don't you?
Yeah, you do. I mean, I'd like to be better than that, but you do. And, you know, you're on the journey with every single player that's in your team, and particularly with a young group, and you're trying to look for that improvement and for them not to make the same mistake. So when they get it right, you get happy. When they muck it up again, you tend to blow up, and sometimes you can sort of anticipate a problem as it's about to occur, which is what happened to me yesterday.
So when Cutler received the handball, were you asking him or praying for him to kick it with his left foot, or were you thinking he was just going to go with his right and go bang straight into the fourth row?
He's done that a few times this year. I mean, he's done a lot of things right, Tommy Cutler, and he was a good player for us yesterday, but he's kicked that.
Too good.
I shouldn't have come in today. You set me up with breaks.
Just on a pet hate of mine, has he got a left foot, and should he have a left foot?
He has got a left foot, but I guess he trusts his right foot a little bit more, was going for distance and made that decision and got it wrong. But he'll learn from that.
Well, Brandy, you've been the proudest man in Australia for the last couple of hours.
I was up and about, don't worry. I was cheering on the way home yesterday watching the footy. That's for Fags. Tell us about the biggest difference. We've seen the difference in outward emotion between being the footy manager and the coach. But what is, behind the scenes, the biggest difference in your transition from those two roles?
When you're the footy manager, you're on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you hate the phone call that happens in the middle of the night, like when Hodgie rang me up one Friday night thereafter he'd been out playing cards. So there's more to think about, in a sense, with the whole football department, whereas with the coaching, it's more specifically on the team and the game at that weekend, and then it opens up a little bit more in the off-season when you're thinking about your list and trading and draft picks and all that sort of business. So, yeah.
Can I ask you about, at your age, you've been in the game a long period of time, we see some coaches come in and they're almost thrust into the job at 40 years of age, and it's ahead of time in a lot of ways. How have you seen it? Do you think that you're better off being a senior coach later in your footballing journey, or do you think that these guys should take the opportunity when it's there at 40 years of age?
I think it's different for different people, but one thing that I would think that would be great is if you've coached your own team before you do it, because there's nothing like coaching your own team at another level to find out whether or not you really want to coach. For me, all the experiences I've had have helped me, and probably with my background, now is probably the right time to coach, whereas for other guys that have played AFL football, maybe coming into assistant coaching roles, I think if you've done that for 5, 6, 7 years and you know a fair bit about the game, you could cope well. But history says, you know, there's all sorts of different guys with different backgrounds have been successful, so there's no one right way, I don't think. It's
been an amazing turnaround because there was a real stench about the place, to be brutally honest, last season. For whatever reason, players become disenchanted. It wasn't a great place to be, but every bit of feedback you get now says the players are loving the environment, loving going to training. Tom Rockliff's a really interesting one. You must have sat down and had a really good chat with him. He wanted to get out, couldn't find a suitor that wanted him, but I mean, what you're getting out of him and getting him back to his best footy speaks volumes for the fact that you walked in with no set agenda.
Yeah, I didn't, and I wanted to judge Tommy on how he was from the moment that I turned up. I knew about all the stories, and he and I had an honest chat about that. He ticked off on some and didn't agree with others, but I think the support we've put in around the leadership group this year has been helpful to him. We've had Simon Fletcher and Ray McLean from leading teams. They've set up a good structure for us. I think people like Tommy, who's a pretty open and honest bloke, actually fits into that system really well, and he's been able to shine. And, you know, his form's been outstanding.
What it again proves to me, though, Chris, is footy clubs are about people and not about buildings. For the last 2 years, all I've heard about is a lack of a training facility. Now, I know you've put some windows in your current training system and you are looking, but I haven't heard the problem about the training facilities for the whole year.
Yeah, you know, my philosophy, big on building relationships, and, you know, if you've got a workplace where people come in, they feel like they're improving, they're enjoying what they're doing each day, they tend to be happy and they tend to stay. And you can do that without great facilities. It's good to have great facilities, but it's not the most important thing. People are.
Can I ask you about Nick Robinson? I thought at the end of the year he was probably a little bit iffy, but you appear to have invested in him, and he's playing some pretty good footy.
Yeah, he's a great trademark player for us. He's a bit like Richie Vandenberg was at Hawthorn back when Clarko started. He's a hard trainer. He'll do anything that you ask him to do on match day. He can play a variety of different roles. He's popular amongst his teammates for that reason, and you know, he's become a bit of a hero amongst his teammates this year.
Fags, tell us about the challenges of retaining the young players. We know that the young players have left over the last few years. You're doing a good job re-signing them now, but talk about the challenges of a young player going up to Queensland, where AFL certainly lacks relevance at the moment. Yeah,
it does. I mean, it's definitely a rugby league town. There's obviously a solid group of AFL supporters up there, but it's not like Melbourne. You can walk around Brisbane, no one knows you, no one pulls you up in the street, no one abuses you, no one will come up and want an autograph. It's not like that at all for anyone that goes up there. So I guess young players who come from Victoria, who are used to living in that footy bubble where it's talked about all the time, that can come as a rude shock to them, and I reckon that contributes to some degree to the fact that they want to come back to the traditional football states, and that's the battle that we have up in Brisbane. You probably would have experienced that yourself a little bit, although the team was successful, so that helped. But when the team's not being successful, the lure of coming back to the footy states is really strong. Is your belief that the contracts should be longer for those draft picks to help alleviate that and help players get settled in the city? Yeah, I think for the particularly first round draft picks, but then again I also think they should get paid more as a result of that, but that would definitely help. It's a battle you're winning, talking about retaining those kids. We've seen so many good re-signings of the young stars, and Josh Schache, who is probably the most talked about young player that we haven't seen enough of to actually know how good this young man's going to be. But it's been a real challenge for him to go through what he's been through as well, hasn't it? Yeah, it has, because before he played a game of football at the Lions, he was on the front of the membership cards and all sorts of things like that. So that's, without the evidence, he was sort of thrust into the limelight. I think that's been a real challenge for him over the last 18 months. I think we've learned a good lesson from that. You know, we made sure this year that the guys we drafted were pretty low key with them.
Yep.
You know, Josh has had to. He's had a few battles with all of that, and the good thing is he's re-signed. He's playing some good footy back in the NEAFL, and when he's ready and feeling confident again, we'll bring him back into the AFL team, and sure he'll have a good strong impact.
Chris, I was looking at your team on the weekend. You weren't just the youngest team on the weekend; the youngest by over a year. Yep. To the second youngest team, which was Melbourne. 6 players under 20 games, 11 under 50 games. It's incredibly young. It's almost like a new franchise young. At the end of the season, will you stay that course and stay young and just grow with these youngsters, or will you need to bolster with some senior core coming in? Guys are maybe 27, 28 years of age.
Yeah, we think if we can get some players who can help us move towards winning a premiership, we'd probably take some older guys. But if they're not there, and they're not blokes that can come in and make a real difference, we'll just stick with the draft for another year.
If you were going to Gillon McLaughlin's place after the program for another dinner, would you ask him to make a common sense decision and close the roof?
Yeah, it's always been a matter of debate, the roof at Etihad. I know Steph Martin yesterday had real difficulty seeing the ball at centre bounces when we were going in one particular direction. From a coaching perspective, the vision's terrible to look at from behind the goals because you've got all different sorts of shades of light and dark. I think it makes sense to have the roof closed. I've always thought that. I've always wondered why they ever bother to open it. And
I might be wrong, but they seem to have regressed. This time last year, the roof automatically got closed.
I thought that was the case too.
And now it's open. I'm not sure why we've gone backwards.
No, I'm not sure either.
No one seems to know that.
Even for the spectators who sit on that side of the ground with the sun shining on their face, it's a very difficult spot to watch the footy.
Would have been a lot of issues you spoke about at the coaches' dinner at Gillon McLaughlin's. Now, we had great footage of all the coaches turning up with a bottle of red or something nice under their arm. Who brought the cheap stuff?
I'll have to probably dob in my old mate Clarko on this one.
What's he going with?
Well, a mate of his from South Australia is into making gin. And so he'd been given this bottle of gin from his mate Con.
Homemade moonshine.
Possibly.
Sly gin.
And he walked in with that, so
he's re-gifting.
I'll give Clarko. He's re-gifting.
After you've each had a nip of the gin, did you work out what we can do about congestion? Because it would appear to be one of the game's greatest on-field issues. Yeah,
it was certainly a big topic of conversation. But as usual, Jared, the coaches were all mixed in their views. There were some that would like us to be, the umpires to be a bit more hard line, and if you don't kick it and you don't handball it and you've had plenty of opportunity to get rid of it, it should be a free kick. And others were more for a bit more leniency. So that was debated for probably 20 to 30 minutes with no real outcome, and I'm not sure which way the AFL will go, but I know that they're concerned about it.
Are you frustrated by the change in interpretation of a number of rules so far this season? Obviously, the deliberate out of bounds, I'm not sure which way it's going from week to week, is the classic example.
Yeah, it is confusing at times, and it must be difficult for the umpires too to make the right calls. The deliberate out of bounds has been one of them. Some of the holding the ball ones are as well, and sometimes when a player ducks, it's a free kick, and sometimes when he does, it doesn't. You know, we've got Reece Matheson at our club who tends to have has a tendency to do that sort of stuff in a game. Some weeks he gets the free kicks, and other weeks he doesn't. Sort of a little bit hard to tell, but yeah, it's a difficult topic, isn't it?
We've got Luke Hodge coming up next week. Do you think he should play on next year? You know him as well as anybody.
Yeah, he's been in great form, hasn't he? It's pretty spectacular, the vision of him last week, mic'd up, and the way that he coaches on field, and certainly, you know, that's been one of the things that I suppose the whole footy world saw the value of Luke Hodge to Hawthorn, not just as a player but as an on-field coach. Has been an important cog in the wheel there for a number of years, and you know, if he wants to keep going, I'd keep him going.
Well, we'll find out next week whether or not he's leaning that way or another. But Chris, it's been great having you in. It was an amazing day for footy yesterday. It's been a great season, and I think it's the first time in my time in footy that the side right down to the bottom of the ladder is a very, very competitive unit, and a lot of the credit has to go to you and your team. Well done, and good luck for the rest of the season.
Thanks very much, Jared. Thanks for having me on.
Chris Fagan, who takes on the catch with his team, the mighty Brisbane Lions. But up next, it's the mighty Luke Hodge. We have the man himself just prior to his 300th game. He's destined for AFL legend status, and we'll talk to him about his future next week. Well, it's another exciting finish in round 15 A great effort by the Cats to be in a winning position a couple of times, in fact. And after the siren, it all revolved around the kick from Tom Hawkins. And in the end, they had to be satisfied with the draw. Jason, how many kicks after the siren did you have?
Never had one.
Not one?
Never had one. I had a couple of them seconds before,
right,
but never one after the siren had actually gone.
Brownie?
Yeah, I had 2 seconds before as well. Nailed them both, Jared.
Yeah, I did know. Nice work.
I had one, Jared, 95 metres from goal. I don't want to relive that one. Dennis he didn't take it too well, Dennis.
Dennis Bacon was thrilled with that. David, tell me about this game and in particular the Giants, who really were lucky to get 2 points.
A couple of things holding them back, Jared, if anything, this year. And the only team that'll beat the Giants is themselves. They're very ordinary defensively at times. They're the Harlem Globetrotters. We've talked about that, the Blacktown Globetrotters. When they get rolling, they are impossible to stop. But they can be selfish. At the end of these runs, look at this. If you pause that there and he slips one more handball to Devon Smith or chips the ball into the goal square or to those leading players, those back leading players, it's the easiest of goals. They've just got to make sure it's the team that scores, not the individual. It's not just Stevie. There's 4 or 5 that want to have that goal on the end of their name board. Yeah,
that's right. And look, you wonder why you don't win the game there. It was obviously a draw or you lose a close game. The answer's simple. It's staring them in their face. It's simple defensive errors as well, Jerry. You know, you look at this. We see this 50-metre penalty Harry Taylor takes. Good initiative by Harry Taylor. Have a look at Lobb on the mark day.
That's great from Harry.
That was great by Harry. Terrible by Lobb. And this results in a goal. They go straight down the other end, coast-to-coast goal. And, you know, GWS end up drawing. So they kick the goal here. They give away another couple of 50-metre penalties in the next quarter, which results in a goal as well, Jared. It's just absolutely unacceptable. These are lapses of cost. This is the last kick in. And so the Geelong players kick in. Tom Hawkins standing there in a one-on-one contest with all of the GWS players inside defence 50. How in hell are you allowed to have a one-on-one contest in that situation? That should have been GWS play over the top, spoil it out of bounds. Game's over. Hawkins doesn't get to have the shot. Giants win by a point. So very, very disappointing there by the Giants and lapses, I agree, King.
I'm getting frustrated, Jared. I'm trying to watch the Kangaroos. I'm trying to stay patient, stay the course with Brad Scott and his troops. First 10 rounds or so, fantastic. The last few weeks, they've really dropped off. Brownie, you were there on the weekend. Let's have a look at this defensive play here from the Kangaroos. They stepped through tackles. It was almost like they weren't there, Jason. You watched it with me. I mean,
Brad Scott will show this to the players. This, Kingy, is simply an insipid sequence of tackling efforts.
Horrible. And I don't care how much talent you've got at the club. There's 4 or 5 mistakes here from the Suns that just let them off the hook every time. But the Kangaroos either don't have the desire or don't have the defensive intent to make sure that they stick these tackles and deny a counter-attack. We know the Suns can move the ball.
Oh, yeah.
We know that. But this in the goal square, I mean, Jamie McMillan's been a wonderful leader for the Kangaroos over the last few years, but you've got to be better than that.
Yeah.
It's one of the most listless halves of football I've seen by North Melbourne. They were terrible in the first half. They came back in the second half, had an opportunity to win the game, but I'll tell you the bloke who was listless for the whole 4 quarters is Todd Goldstein. I called it out last week. I said he should have been dropped. He definitely should be dropped this week, Jared. Oh, yeah, Todd Goldstein's really struggling. He's playing with no vigour. Now, I know I speak often about presence from your big blokes. He's showing absolutely no presence whatsoever in the air. It's been very disappointing. Now, I can understand maybe North are reluctant to drop Goldie because they're maybe trying to keep his trade value up and it may not look good, but at the end of the day, if he keeps playing football like he is in the seniors moment, his trade value will plummet, or his value to the North Melbourne Football Club will plummet. He needs a reset, go back to the reserves, get his form back, get his confidence back, and come back and be the player that he should be.
I'll tell you who's a good player is Ahmed Saad, and we'll focus on him.
Adam
Saad. He is a star, and he's not out of contention for All-Australian honours as well, at least the squad. But
and Gaz's 300th as well. He was magnificent. He was terrific. Well done to the great man, the little master.
I want to go back to Fremantle. They butchered a win yesterday. St Kilda were brave and they got across the line, but they're not learning at this stage. Go back to last week. Connor Blakely made his first mistake of the week when he tried to cross the ball, gave it too much hang time. We know about his second, going surfing in Bunbury. There's plenty of years for surfing, young fella, and I tell you what, you'll live to regret that move. But that was the first one. Too much hang time going across the ground to this bloke. So what's he do? They're in a similar position, way too much hang time, intercept and goal. You've got to have a better feel for the game. than making silly errors like that.
Great play from Gresham. So there's two sides to that, but you're spot on. Got to be better than that. I think that's why Ross said they put the butcher's apron on. Carried down back.
And there's a lot of blood on that apron, David. We're going to take a break. Up next, Hollywood. And he's got one question to answer. Where is Dusty going to play next year?
Riewoldt just holds, doesn't make his lead instead. She's kick it to Dusty. Dusty will take it 55 out, and Dusty might go for broke. He does. He follows the same path as Rioli. Same result. Tigers in front.
And it's one of my favourite songs, R-E-S-P-E-C-T. I might have had that mixed up with R-E-S-P-C-A at one stage. But let's find out what's happening in football. Show some respect to Dusty, you guys. Yeah. Hollywood Warner joins us from the Herald Sun. Welcome, Michael.
How are you?
You're desperate to see the signature for Dusty Martin. I think the whole footy world's ready for him to sign. When's he going to sign and where's he going to play?
Well, I think the answer to where he's going to play might lie where the biggest bag of money is. His manager, Ralph Carr, has flown out to the US for a month-long vacation, so he's not in any hurry to get a deal done. I think this will drag out into the finals and potentially beyond into the trade period. Now, look, the Richmond deal will be the biggest ever made to a Richmond player in the history of the club, so it won't be, not substantial, but they could yet get blown out of the water by the Godfather offer.
How much does Richmond want at?
I think it's at around 6 years and 1 to 1.1 million. I don't think they would go beyond that and, jeopardise their salary cap.
Can I just say that was great vision there? Two parts to it. Dustin Martin's run, we know that, very creative. But Jack Riewoldt did everything right to allow Dustin a free passage at goal there. And I think it's going understated or undersold, Jack's influence on this team and this forward line. Kicking more goals than he ever has on average, but he's fantastic at the moment. Selfless.
Speaking about player contracts, we spoke about the poor month that JJ's had from a commercial perspective. What's he worth now?
Well, I think the Western Bulldogs think he's worth about $600,000, no more than that. His talk's also off, and you can see from those stats there that his form has really fallen away in the last 4 weeks. So he's been heavily tagged, but no decision will be made there until the end of the year.
An AFL employee, Ali Fahua, has got himself in a lot of trouble, and it's a story that won't go away for at least a few days.
It's a really bad look, this, and he's got two issues. One is whether he actually plays football again. Yep. Obviously, there's a rule in suburban footy, if you have a cumulative suspensions of over 16 weeks, you get a life ban. He's been reported once this year for striking. This obviously could be a lengthy suspension. And then the AFL have to decide, is he a fit and proper person to have that senior job at the AFL? I think he will keep his job, but he'd certainly be on his last warning.
What would you give Ali for that punch, Jason?
Yeah, that probably looks to me a bit like your 6 to 8 weeker, Jared. That's at the top end, isn't it?
Would you red card him?
Well, they have the red. Do they have the red card? They do. Yeah, I think that's a red card.
He got the red card, and he also only got a 2-week suspension after the game, but obviously that will be appealed. Has been appealed.
Extraordinary.
He'll face the tribunal, which will be a closed tribunal, by the way. No media allowed.
What about Jimmy Webster?
Yeah, look, I think Jimmy Webster got a little bit confused. You can see the footage here that he probably wanted to jump a punch and realised he couldn't do that, and it's poked him in the eye there. He's got the 2 weeks, and they will accept that.
He's a big loss. Jimmy Webster's been good from a half-back. He's a big part of their ball movement.
One of the great stories of the weekend was the return, finally, of Alex Johnson.
Yeah, it's a great story. He's been out for 4 years. He's had about 12 surgeries, and a few of his teammates flew up to see this great occasion.
Two great sides here. One is the goal and the comeback of Alex Johnson, and there is Aliir. Reports of his death have been grossly exaggerated, Jason. He's still with us. He's alive. I can't wait to see him back.
What about Joel Selwood and Jack Viney?
So Joel Selwood, the decision was made at about midday on Saturday. It was the doctor's orders. Joel accepted the decision, but the Geelong Footy Club actually going to spend the week up on the Gold Coast, so a bit of sun and surf will help him. And Jack Viney, it's the plantar fascia, which he had operated on to release it today. Robert Harvey, back in the day, tried a different technique, which was jumping off the kitchen table. Brownie, I think you suffered the...
Yeah, I ruptured one in the game. It's a painful injury, but the best thing to happen is to have the operation or have the rupture occur. So he'll be back within the month, I would have thought.
Tasmanian football and Hawthorn's future will be in the news tomorrow night after Jeff Kennett was interviewed by Mike Sheehan.
Now, confidentially, as no one else is listening to this, one of my great worries is the AFL, who have been trying for years to get us out of there and to put North Melbourne as the sole AFL club in Tasmania.
You mean that literally?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the response from the AFL, Mick?
Yeah, they're pretty strong words from Jeff Kennett. The AFL have given us a statement tonight. They're certainly not denying the fact that they did want Hawthorn out of Tasmania, but they will respect it until 2020. But I think Hawthorn's days in Tasmania are numbered.
Fantastic, Mick. Appreciate all the update. Appreciate your thoughts tonight and your respect, gentlemen. We'll see you next week.